Can you talk through the art of portfolio construction? So list a couple of different kind of buckets here, thinking about growth, value, so REITs and dividend stocks, asking some questions like percentage of capital and positioning, and then things like just diversifying into various sectors, thinking about things like making it anti-fragile, right? So during periods of uncertainty, your portfolios actually get stronger. And then thinking about once you have a base, expanding it with capital you have coming in every month. I'm going to kick this off and talk for a minute and give you guys just a minute to kind of think about it. And then you can kind of share your own insights. I've talked about this a little bit before, but by and large, my stock portfolio for many years, my strategy was to buy the best companies I could buy as many of them as I could, and then own them for as long as I possibly could, right? Like that was the strategy. I've never been one to spend a lot of time thinking about allocation to, certain industries, right? If that was something that I really was concerned about, I would just buy index funds, right? Because they're already they do that already. I've never really been that concerned about it. My biggest, and a part of it, right? I'm, at my age, I'm still in my early 40s. So I'm still multiple decades that I'm measuring my financial goals. And that gives me margin of safety to not be too worried about being overexposed to certain sectors from, for a few quarters or a year or two or that kind of thing, if there's a sector downturn, that kind of thing. So to me, the way I think about it is as my process has kind of evolved over time, is I've developed kind of a barbell strategy, right? So on one end of the barbell, and it's not like a balanced barbell, it's like 70-30, 80-20. But on one end of the barbell is growth, right? I really focus on buying companies that can grow. Typically that means they're smaller companies. And again, it matches up with my financial goals. I have a 4-year-old. I'm 20 years from retirement. I'm measuring my goals in decades. So I need to invest generally in growth stocks. And I think disruptive companies that are growing and in industries that are growing, like the cloud, right? It's a hell of a lot easier to buy a basket of cloud stocks and have the tailwinds to make money than fall into the weeds to think I need to diversify and also maybe buy some oil and gas too. You look at which of those sectors has done very well over the past 10 years, which has done terribly. Think about over the next 10 years, which do you think is going to do better, oil and gas or the cloud, right? So I simplify it that way and look for growth with the majority of my investing. The other end of the barbell, dividend stocks. So companies that are typically more mature businesses, or their business model means that they pay dividends. So like renewable energy yield cos, for example, they're built to pay dividends. So buy the best companies in that area that I can, that pay an above average yield, that are built with strong balance sheets and abilities with the tailwinds that are going to grow their cash flows so they can grow those dividends over time. That's my barbell investing strategy. At some point, as I get older, as I get closer to financial goals, and I'm no longer a decade or 2 decades from something, then the way I'm going to change it is I need to start protecting from the downside, which means I need to shift some of that out of equities into cash or maybe bonds with the right terms that are going to mature when I'm going to need the cash. So that's about avoiding all of the risks of volatility to the downside with all equities. I don't get too tied up with just specific buckets. Taylor, Travis, who wants to make a pass at this?
I will. This is a fun subject, a fun question.
It is. It really, and it's very individual, right? That's the thing about it.
If you think about it, a stock, a company has a lifespan like a human being, right? It has its early days when it's a baby, and it's its long days until it dies. So a company can last decades and decades and decades. So
they can be reborn too, right? So use the Microsoft example Travis had earlier.
That's a very good example. What I think really works really well is when you buy a fast growing small company, like say you buy Amazon in 1999 or 2002 or 2004, or you buy Intuitive Surgical in 2007, 2008, and you hit gold, right? I mean, it's just a wonderful stock, an amazing stock. You let it roll, you let it run, and you may take little slivers along the way. And as you take tiny little, and honestly, we sold a little bit of Intuitive Surgical, and we're sorry to this day that we did. Sold a little bit of Shopify, sorry to this day that we did. But you take little tiny slivers. If you need cash, if you don't sell anything. Take little tiny slivers and buy another growth stock. The idea being, if you let them run and then just keep them, eventually they're going to mature. They're going to turn into dividend payers. They're going to be a lot safer. They're going to be in the S&P 500, and they get kind of boring. But keep the boring ones too. I mean, everybody's personality is different. I tend to jump on the high growth ones, and my family owns Apple. We've owned Apple forever. I've been trying to get my mom to sell a sliver of Apple. She loves Apple. She gets mad at me. I'm like, Mom, let's get rid of some of this Apple. But she's right, and she's been right, that it's a great idea just to let, even when it gets boring and it's near, you feel like it's topped out or there might be hitting a ceiling, keep it and let that turn into your slow growers. And diversify along the way, of course, in different sectors. But I always think you should kind of, when you buy, I think you should buy growth and then hold up into the value stage would be the way I would take it.
Travis?
Yeah, I'm a little bit like Jason in that I don't have a specific process. I like to think of it as being able to sleep at night or just feeling comfortable looking at my portfolio. One of the things that I do is when I buy stocks, I typically don't like those entry points to be more than, it's maybe 1% of my portfolio. I don't have a large number of positions, but compared to a lot of people. So it might be 20 to 35 stocks at any given time. So 1% might be a typical allocation into a stock. And then if that stock runs up, I added Cloudflare. It was less than 1%, and that's run up and is now 4 or 5% of my portfolio. That was just a surprise to me, and I'm just going to let that ride. I don't need to add more to that. But that's kind of what Taylor was talking about, is let those growth stocks ride. But at the end of the day, I think when I look at my portfolio as in totality, I sort of judge, does this feel comfortable? Does this feel right, especially in this moment? And when you go through, times of, we're at a time of exuberance in the market right now. So I look at my portfolio and I go, man, growth stocks are really highly valued right now. So what are my biggest positions? Well, it's companies like Apple, Square, which could easily argue that it's too highly valued, but I've got Verizon in there. These are companies that I'm comfortable owning, even if there's a downturn. It's not like their businesses are going to completely fall apart. And so it's really more of a, does this seem right? Then it is a metrics that I'm able to put on a spreadsheet and go, a certain percentage REITs, a certain percentage dividend stocks, just naturally over the course of time. That portfolio ends up diversifying itself as I find more attractive opportunities in different parts of the market. I mean, I've been adding stocks like GM and Zillow that I've never had in the portfolio before, that have diversified me into areas that I've never invested in before, because I find them interesting and attractive right now. So it's something that's different for everybody, but that's the way that I look at my portfolio construction right now.
Thanks, guys. I think it's useful and helpful. And again, the key here is it is so individual, right? So 3 people that we had overlaps, but we also all take our unique individual approaches. And that's one of the things that's great about investing, is we get to figure out what's going to work best for us, right? As individual investors and our families, and meeting our financial goals.